Members, it's time for questions to the Minister for Infrastructure, and I call Kellie Armstrong to ask the first question, please. Agus íram ser an Irish chun fragartha. I could now call the Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. The member will be aware of my commitment to housing here in Northern Ireland, particularly in relation to social and affordable housing, given the crisis facing our communities. The planning system here provides a statutory target of 15 weeks for determining local planning applications and 30 weeks for determining major planning applications. In 2020-21, over 8,700 residential planning applications were received. In the same period, over 7,000 residential applications were decided. 96% of those were approved. You will be aware that since the transfer of planning functions in 2015, the majority of planning applications are processed by councils, and it is the responsibility of each local planning authority to ensure that these are processed in a timely manner. My department monitors the performance of councils through a number of mechanisms, including the statutory planning indicators, and it also monitors and reports on a number of non-statutory planning indicators contained within the planning monitoring framework. Recent performance has clearly been impacted by the restrictions put in place due to the coronavirus pandemic, but I expect this to improve as we emerge from the pandemic, and my department is working with all stakeholders to drive forward improvement. Measures we have taken include the establishment of a cross-government planning forum, whose focus is on improving performance around the planning statutory consultation process and ultimately timeframes for processing major and economically significant applications. I share frustrations of members, and I want to provide assurances that I am focused on moving things forward. I am undertaking a review of the implementation of the Planning Act, which will consider how we can further improve the system for all stakeholders, and my department has invested, along with 10 local councils, in the replacement of the current planning portal system to provide a more modern planning service. This is expected to be operational in 2022. I also believe that effective and inclusive community engagement is an important part of a fit-for-purpose planning system, and that is why I have also established a planning engagement partnership to look at how we can enhance the quality and depth of community engagement in the planning process at both the regional and local planning levels.
Kellie Armstrong, supplementary question for Kellie Armstrong.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thank you very much, Minister. Minister, I'm glad to hear when you talked about statutory consultees coming together, but a few of the key culprits in causing delays in determining planning applications rest within your own department, namely DFI, Rivers and Roads, who as statutory consultees can be a bit slow. What actions will you personally take to ensure they start meeting their own targets for a response?
I thank the member for her question, and as I'd outlined in the original response, one area that we are focused on as a department is improving the performance of statutory consultees in the planning system. As you are no doubt aware, there are many factors which impact the overall performance of the planning system, and statutory consultee response times, even within my own department, is a reason for delay. To address this, the department established a cross-government planning forum. The forum is a group of senior leaders within my department and from the statutory consultee bodies, as well as representatives from local government working together. Its key focus is to oversee the implementation of recommendations made in an independent report on the role of statutory consultees in the planning process. This work has a particular focus on improving processes and timeframes for determining major and economically significant planning applications. The latest statutory performance figures show that consultees have responded to 76% of all statutory planning consultations within 21 days. Despite the impact of the pandemic, this performance has improved over the previous year by 7%. But I recognise this remains an issue, and I am committed to improving the planning system for the benefit of all of our stakeholders.
I call Stephen Dunn.
Mr Deputy Speaker, the current average waiting time in Ards and North Down, for example, varies from 5 to 18 months for a general application, and consultations are generally the main cause of delay. After speaking from applicants and agents, and particularly singled out is the Minister's Department's DFI Roads and NI Water. What more can she do to improve this process, and what engagement has she had with the councils, given the regional disparities that exist between councils, which can be very frustrating for applicants and agents? Thank you.
I thank the member for his question. In terms of consultee response times, we have the cross-departmental forum, which is very much focused on this issue, about improving response times for consultees, including those within my own department. I'm also very aware that there is capacity challenges as well. We've seen a significant increase in the volume and the complexity of planning applications, particularly coming through to the Rivers side. So I've been meeting with officials to press on them the importance of getting these issues resolved as a matter of urgency. In terms of our engagement with local councils, the Chief Planner and my officials have regular engagement with local councils because, of course, we monitor performance there but also have an oversight role.
Sir Nichola Brogan for your case. I call Nichola Brogan.
And I thank the Minister for her answer so far. Minister, another significant issue related to the planning process and housing is that of unadopted roads. And before recess, you'll know that this Assembly passed a motion calling for action to address issues around unadopted roads, and specifically about people getting access to services such as grading and bin collection. So can the Minister give us an update on the measures taken to resolve these problems, please?
I thank the member for her question. And a previous Regional Development Committee also looked at this issue and had a report with a number of recommendations which the Department has been taking forward. The issue of unadopted lanes and streets is a challenge for my department. I think at the last assessment of the financial impact, it stood at £300 million. That was a 2018 prices in terms of bringing all of the unadopted streets and roads up to an adopted standard. But of course we continue to work with residents who live and are impacted by this issue, and we have successfully adopted a number of streets every year across Northern Ireland. But of course it is a challenge given the extent, but it is something that we continue to work on even within the capacity and financial constraints.
Call Claire Sugden.
Deputy Speaker, does the Minister recognise that current planning policy is limited or perhaps misinterpreted to enable specifically affordable housing schemes? I am not aware of any recent affordable housing schemes in rural areas particularly.
I thank the member for her question, and I'm very clear that we should have a planning system that enables us to be able to build social and affordable homes. My officials have been working with the Department for Communities in this area, but of course a lot of this is determined in local councils, and as councils are working through their local development plan, I think this provides a very important opportunity to be maximising the opportunities that we have across Northern Ireland to be building the many homes that we need.
Sir Colm Gildernew for your case. I call Colm Gildernew.
Question number 2, please.
I thank the member for this important question. He will be aware that I have been consistently raising the need for investment in water and wastewater infrastructure. I can advise that there are 23 wastewater systems with capacity issues in the areas of Fermanagh and South Tyrone. In terms of impacts on developments, Northern Ireland Water is a statutory consultee in the planning process and provides recommendations based on the availability of wastewater assets and their capacity. The final decision on planning applications rests solely with the relevant planning authority. To help resolve these impacts, Northern Ireland Water plans to invest approximately £56.5 million within the current PC21 programme to upgrade wastewater treatment works and wastewater networks in Fermanagh and South Tyrone. However, it is vital that sustained and secure availability of funding is provided to Northern Ireland Water throughout the PC21 period. Fermanagh and Omagh District Council is advancing its local development plan. Its draft plan strategy is currently with the Planning Appeals Commission, and formal hearing, independent examination sessions are due to commence in late autumn, early winter. It is anticipated that my department will be invited to attend the independent examinations hearing sessions to discuss, among other things, the impact of wastewater infrastructure and capacity constraints affecting the council area. The development plan growth strategy should seek to maximise the use of existing infrastructure, including wastewater treatment and sewage network capacity and resources, by focusing growth in locations where capacity exists. Where infrastructure capacity constraints are identified, the Council must liaise closely with Northern Ireland Water to establish if these can be overcome.
Colm Gildernew, a supplementary question for Colm Gildernew.
And I thank the Minister for answer. However, Minister, I have been in correspondence with NI Water in relation to Auchnafly, where it has been confirmed no further connections into the sewer system can be permitted. They go on to state that they have no allocation within the 2021 to 2027 business plan, and as such, no timeframe can be provided for when the necessary upgrades will be taken forward. Minister, when can and this is having a serious impact in terms of environmental, people building houses and economic development in my area and in the region of Auchnacloy. Can you indicate when Auchnacloy's wastewater capacity will be addressed, Minister?
I thank the member for his question, and this is the outworkings of historic underinvestment over many years in our water and wastewater infrastructure. I was pleased this financial year to allocate the funding levels identified by the utility regulator. That's the first time that has happened in a long time, but there's still so much more that we should be able to do. The member may know that Northern Ireland Water undertakes comprehensive business planning activities within each price control period, and that's informed by my department's social and environmental guidance. Northern Ireland Water works with the regulator to identify the most benefit in terms of investment to our customers. So the selection of projects is not something that I as a Minister am involved in, but I'm happy to pass on your representations to Northern Ireland Water. But I must press on members the importance of sustained investment in our water and wastewater infrastructure over the next number of years.
I call Rosemary Barton.
Thank you, Minister, for your answer so far. Minister, you'll be very aware of the Galgay Shore development in Enniskillen. I'm wondering if you can give me an update on the progress there's been in relation to the sewage treatment works there. Thank you.
I really sympathise with the residents of Galgay Shore because this is a very distressing situation, but I'm sure the member is aware that Galgay Shore is a private development and neither my department nor Northern Ireland Water has any legal remit to carry out works in private developments such as these. I am aware that the residents have been liaising with the National House Building Council regarding its responsibilities in the development, and I believe an offer has been made by the NHBC which has been accepted by the residents. The residents have also advised that they are working with a contractor to have an on-site investigation into the works carried out, a design solution prepared and a full cost estimate for the works detailed. If there is a shortfall in the funding required to fully complete the works, the residents have approached my department to ask if assistance could be provided in making up this shortfall should that be required. I am considering if this can be achieved using my Blue-Green Infrastructure Fund, and my officials will be in contact with the residents as this case develops. Once full and final costings have been provided, I will be able to take a decision on any contribution that may be possible from my department.
Dolores Kelly, I call Dolores Kelly.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And Minister, just wonder, in terms of any commitments that the Executive has given you to deal with the water pressures, and indeed if you could give us an update on the Infrastructure Commission.
I thank the member for her question. Out of my budget this year, I have allocated a total of £344.5 million to Northern Ireland Water. As I said, this is the first time in a long time that Northern Ireland Water has been fully funded. And I have also provided an additional £20 million in capital funding to help Northern Ireland Water bring forward much-needed projects originally planned for delivery later in the PC21 price control period. The scale of the wastewater capacity issues across the north will realistically take at least 12 years to address, and without sufficient investment, Northern Ireland Water will be at risk of breaching statutory environmental obligations, and the ability of the economy to recover could also be affected. I will continue to make representations to my executive colleagues, because if we're not investing in our water and wastewater infrastructure, then we won't be able to grow our economy, we won't be able to build the many homes that we need, and we won't be able to tackle the climate emergency. In respect of the Infrastructure Commission, the member will know that that is an agreed commitment now in the Executive's published COVID recovery strategy, and so I look forward to us realising that commitment. I'd hope that we don't experience any further delay, because an Infrastructure Commission, I believe, is a game changer that our economy, society and environment needs.
Call Maurice Bradley.
Mr Deputy Speaker, I thank the Minister for her answers so far. But could I ask the Minister if her department would undertake a review of infrastructure throughout Northern Ireland with a specific focus on the restrictions that lack of infrastructure in wastewater and sewage is having in the rural community? I know I've corresponded with the Minister quite some time ago about the village of Armoy as just one example, but it's replicated throughout Northern Ireland.
I thank the member for his question, and Northern Ireland Water is engaged extensively with the utility regulator to be able to identify the locations that require investment. As I've said on a number of occasions, we are in this situation because of historic underinvestment in our water and wastewater infrastructure, but I want to reassure the member that Northern Ireland Water is doing everything that it can within the budgetary constraints that it's had to operate in. In terms of having an overview of the infrastructure here in Northern Ireland, I absolutely agree with the member, and that's why I've proposed the establishment of an infrastructure commission here in Northern Ireland, so that it would take a long-term strategic approach to infrastructure in terms of its vision and its delivery. And it's a proposal that is now contained in the Executive's COVID recovery strategy and has overwhelming support right across the business and environmental sector. I believe if we did have an infrastructure commission, then we would be better placed to tackle regional imbalance and ensure that we have the right infrastructure in the right places, and of course ensuring that our rural community does not lose out.
Mayor Colin McGrath, when you cast, I call Colin McGrath.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. Question number 3.
In February 2020, Mr Deputy Speaker, as an Assembly, we voted to declare a climate emergency, and the New Decade New Approach Agreement directed the Executive to bring forward legislation that sets specific targets for Northern Ireland. I believe it is essential that we work together to ensure ambitious but realistic targets are enshrined in legislation in order to protect our society, our economy and our environment for both current and future generations. As political leaders, we need to set out a clear plan for achieving a just transition to net zero in Northern Ireland as quickly as possible. As an executive, we have collectively agreed to host a climate summit ahead of this global conference in acknowledgement of the need to urgently set out a clear collective plan for achieving that just transition. We had a useful discussion at a recent executive meeting on the 2 climate change bills working their way through the Assembly, and I look forward to a more comprehensive debate with our stakeholders in a climate summit. As Minister for Infrastructure, I take my duty to people and our environment seriously, and I am continuing to drive projects forward to help mitigate the climate crisis and ensure Northern Ireland adapts to the impacts of climate change. These projects include a £20 million annual investment in Blue-Green Infrastructure Fund to make public transport and active travel a more attractive and efficient alternative to the use of private cars. And this includes a significant investment of £13.5 million to support the development of greenways by councils and active travel schemes by my department. A £4 million investment in sustainable produced hydrogen buses and hydrogen refuelling infrastructure with TransLink, Energia, the Office for Zero Emission Vehicles, £74 million of investment in low and zero emission buses for TransLink, and investment in excess of £60 million to purchase new train carriages in order to encourage more people out of their cars and onto rail. In addition, I recently consulted on Living with Water in Belfast, which sets out a new approach to the provision of drainage infrastructure in Greater Belfast by promoting holistic and integrated solutions that achieve a wide range of benefits at reduced cost and disruption.
Colin McGrath, supplementary question for Colin McGrath.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. And can I thank the Minister for her answer and also her commitment within her department and remit for challenging the climate crisis and climate emergency that we face. And also for calling for a climate summit of the Executive to push it to do all the work that it possibly can. And could I ask if the Minister could give me an update on the work of that climate summit and also the preparations that have been made for COP26?
I was pleased that the Executive did agree that we would host a climate summit in advance of COP26 in November. The call for a climate summit followed the publication of a UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report that warned of a code red for humanity. This summit will provide an opportunity for all departments to develop an action plan to deliver a just transition to net zero ahead of COP26. I've written twice to the Executive Office to ask for an update on planning and arrangements because it is a cross-cutting matter. They, of course, are taking the lead. And I'm very keen that we have a wide range of attendees at that summit to ensure that we can get a wide, varied input. It is only if we work together across government and with the private sector, communities and citizens that we would really tackle the climate emergency.
Liz Kimmins, when you cast, I call Liz Kimmins.
And I thank the Minister for her answer so far. Minister, in your response you mentioned electric vehicles, and I think one tangible step in addressing the climate crisis would be to ensure we have an adequate charge point system in place for those using electric vehicles. As you know, the current network is in a terrible condition and an urgent upgrade is desperately needed. In the South, ASB have received funding from the government through the Climate Action Fund, and I know they are asking for similar assistance here in the North. Because we do need to encourage people to take up greener transport like electric vehicles, and access to charge points will have a significant part to play in driving that shift. So can the Minister therefore indicate if there are any plans to provide similar investment into our charge point network here.
Thank the member for her question. And as members will be aware, the e-car public charge point network is owned, operated and maintained by ESB. I have met with them to encourage them to repair non-functioning charge points, and I am pleased that ESB has commenced a replacement programme which will upgrade a number of faulty charge points with more modern operational charge points. The member will also be aware that I have changed planning rules so that it's easier in terms of advancing e-charging infrastructure, and that I've also provided match funding for the EU Interreg funded Faster Electric Vehicle Network project, which will see the installation of additional rapid charging points here. There is funding available under the Office of Zero Emission Vehicles. My department unfortunately can't draw that funding down, but local councils have, and so we've been working very closely to encourage councils to take up that funding, and that work is ongoing. I very recently also had a meeting with the then Future Transport Minister, Rachel McLean, to ensure that we can maximise funding. I'm also exploring opportunities through my Blue-Green Fund, and I'm pleased to say that I've offered match funding up to £350,000 to those councils who wish to draw down the funding from the British Government.
I call John Blair.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, key to tackling the climate crisis is the move from the combustion engine to electric vehicles. Can I ask if the Minister will commit to exploring the introduction of interest-free loans for those who wish to purchase a new electric vehicle or electric bikes, for example, as was done through the Transport Scotland initiative?
I thank the member for his question. I would say that the introduction of interest-free loans would be a matter that would fall outside of my department, but I am pleased to say that as my department has been working on the energy strategy, and in particular looking at the modes of transport, we are establishing an action group very much focused on e-charging and how we can roll e-charging network out, but also tackle the barriers that remain in terms of encouraging people to make that switch. I'm sure that this is an issue that they may consider.
Cara Hunter from I called Cara Hunter.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Question 4, please, Minister.
I am pleased to advise that the new 15-kilometre section of dual carriageway along the A6 between Randalstown and Castledawson was fully open to traffic on the 31st of May. I'm sure that the member will agree that this was a very significant milestone that is improving connectivity to the North West and delivering journey time savings for commuters, buses and goods vehicles. In addition, construction of the new 25.5-kilometre section of dual carriageway between Drumahoe and Dungiven, which includes a bypass of Dungiven, is also progressing well. The earthworks and 16 of the 22 structures are substantially complete, and the mainline pavement construction is also well advanced. It is expected that this dualling scheme will be complete in 2022, largely as planned. When both these schemes are complete, approximately 3/4 of the Belfast to Derry route will be dual carriageway standard or better. As well as improving the standard of carriageway along the A6, both schemes also provide enhanced provision for public transport, pedestrians and cyclists. New park and ride sites are now operational at Drumderg and Drumahoe, with a further park and ride site currently under construction at Clauda. Together, these flagship schemes represent an investment of over £400 million and will significantly enhance the connectivity of the North West, improve journey time reliability, reduce journey times and, importantly, improve road safety.
Cara Hunter.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I welcome the Minister's commitment to enhancing our connectivity in the wider North West. On the subject of rural connectivity, can I ask the Minister for an update on the Dungiven Park and Ride? Thank you.
I know that the member is very supportive of the Dungiven Park and Ride, and she has raised this issue with me previously. A pre-application notice has been submitted to Causeway Coast and Glens Borough Council, and the design is currently being finalised. I am pleased to report that a public consultation on the proposals will be carried out prior to submission of a full planning application towards the end of this year.
I call George Robinson.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Could I ask the Minister, due to the long delays caused by the traffic light system entering and leaving Dungiven to facilitate the A6 roadworks, how long would this arrangement be in place? And while I consider this work very necessary and taking into consideration that roadworks are taking place between Ballymoney and Ballymena, Motorists coming from the North West to Belfast and beyond are severely inconvenienced.
Again, I thank the member for his question. The ongoing traffic management at Dungiven is essential to facilitate the construction of a new roundabout to connect the existing A6 Glenshane Road to the new A6 dual carriageway. Unfortunately, due to the nature of this work, lane closures on the A6 are unavoidable. However, work has been sequenced in order to minimise the number of lane closures required by maximising offline working, extending the weekday working hours and working weekends when necessary. My officials are continuing to liaise with the contractor, elected representatives and local residents to ensure that any impact arising from the ongoing works at Dungiven is minimised as much as possible.
Iarmar Fáraigh Doherty, Fáinne Ceist, I call Padraig Doherty.
While progress in the A6 is welcome, another vital stretch of road for the North West, the A5, has been delayed again in the public reopening of the scheme. I'm very concerned by this, and can I ask the Minister, can she provide an update on what her department is doing to ensure that there will be no further delays to the A5?
I thank the member for his question, and we have discussed many times in this chamber the challenges and delays to the A5. Certainly one of the things that I find frustrating is that at a previous public inquiry it was given the green light, but unfortunately we had no ministers in place to take it forward. My officials are working at pace towards the publication of a new environmental statum addendum so the public inquiry can be reconvened as recommended by the PAC next year. Receipt of the PAC's final report from the inquiry should then allow a ministerial decision to be taken, and subject to the successful completion of all the necessary statutory processes and environmental assessment, the construction of Phase 1A could then commence. The programme for scheme delivery in recent years has alluded to full scheme completion by 2028, and although some slippage has occurred, this timeframe remains achievable. I would once again reiterate my commitment to the A5 flagship project, which is of significant strategic importance to the region, helping to tackle regional imbalance, improve the economy, job prospects and prosperity, connecting communities and improving road safety.
Declan McAleer, Fáinne Ceist.
Question 6 of the whole.
The PAN provides advice which councils, as planning authorities in their own right, will take into account when determining planning applications for development in the countryside, along with all other material planning considerations. It is important to note that the PAN does not, however, change planning policy. It is intended to assist planning authorities and users of the planning system in the interpretation and implementation of extant planning policy as contained in the Strategic Planning Policy Statement. It re-emphasises and clarifies several policy issues and will assist in ensuring a consistent interpretation of the policy across the North. I firmly believe that the current policy approach for development in the countryside remains appropriate and facilitates sustainable patterns of development while also supporting a vibrant rural community. I will of course continue to consider current and emerging issues to ensure that strategic planning policy for development in the countryside is fit for purpose.
Ceist Breisig, Declan McAleer, supplementary question.
I thank the Minister for a response, and the Minister will be very aware that there are a lot of concerns in the country about this here. The planning note which she refers to appears to restrict the interpretation of planning policy and make it more difficult for people to build in the countryside. And in the most instances, that will impact on young couples wanting to build beside the home place. So there's enough pressure in rural communities at the minute between Brexit and broadband and rural isolation in the middle of the pandemic. Would the Minister consider reconsidering this planning advice note and perhaps withdrawing it?
I thank the member for his question, and I want to make sure that we are supporting our rural communities and ensuring that they are vibrant places to live. I do want to stress that the PAN does not change existing planning policy. As I've said, it's intended to assist councils as planning authorities in their own right to be able to give their assessment of what material weight to be afforded to planning considerations. It is therefore, as I say, ultimately up to councils to make that determination, and I would emphasise again that this PAN does not in any way change the planning policy that was consulted on and agreed prior to me taking up post.
Jonathan Buckling.
Despite what the Minister has said, she will understand that some councils have interpreted the new planning advice note as a change of policy. and has therefore created complications in different local council areas, leading to many of them thinking that there has been a change in policy. So can I ask, what consultation did the Minister have with executive colleagues before issuing this note?
I thank the member for his question, and as I said, it's up to local councils as planning authorities in their own right to give determination to the relevance of material planning considerations. In terms of the consultation that took place, since the publication of the SPPS, the Department issued a call for evidence in March 2016 to help inform the scope of a potential review of strategic planning policy on development in the countryside. This attracted responses from a wide range of interests, including local government, environmental groups, business, industry, residents groups, professional bodies and individuals. The Department also procured consultants in March 2017 to undertake research and provide an updated evidential context to inform the best strategic planning policy approach for development in the countryside. This research involved focused stakeholder engagement, including seminars with council planning managers, professional institutions and environmental interest groups. It also included individual meetings with relevant organisations, including the Northern Ireland Housing Executive, Construction Employers Federation, the Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs, Rural Community Network and Ulster Farmers Union. The above-aforementioned work helped inform the preferred way forward for strategic planning policy for development in the countryside and my decision to issue the PAN.
That ends the period for listed questions, and we'll now move on to 15 minutes of topical questions, and I call Mr. William Irwin.
Minister, following the announcement that new rules for towing a trailer and a caravan with a car will be introduced in England, Scotland and Wales later this autumn, will the Minister commit to ensure Northern Ireland benefits by also introducing the change?
I'm aware that GB is introducing changes to Class B and E trailer tests to try to help the sector tackle the lorry driver shortage. My department had no prior knowledge of this change prior to the public announcement. The implications of these changes for road safety will need further consideration. But I want to point out that testing is not seen as a significant reason for HGV driver shortages here. A recent Road Haulage Association survey identifies drivers' retirements, Brexit of course, and changes to off-payroll working rules as the three main reasons for the shortage. Testing was not identified as an issue by hauliers in the UK-wide survey. At this time, the DVA can facilitate practical driving tests and theory tests for LGV drivers. The DVA is not aware of any specific concerns being raised by training schools regarding the availability of appointments, but training schools are encouraged to liaise directly with their appropriate centre management team should additional testing capacity be required. The DVA will continue to liaise with training schools to monitor the demand for tests. In the first full 4 months since driving tests resumed on the 23rd of April, the DVA has conducted 1,290 LGV driving tests, which is 65% higher than the 5-year average for that period, demonstrating a clear commitment to providing increased testing capacity for the sector.
Mr. Irwin for a supplementary.
Thank you, and can I thank the Minister for a response. Given the fact that there will be divergence in the rules if Northern Ireland does not change, if someone comes from England, Scotland and Wales with their caravan to Northern Ireland on holiday, what way do they stand then legally if they're driving in Northern Ireland?
My understanding is if they complete that in GB and they come over here, it should be fine. But of course, given the seriousness of the issue, what I would like to do is to be able to double check with officials and confirm in writing to the member.
I call Joanne Bunting.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. We didn't reach my question in the previous session on the lighting on the Colm Greenway, so I'd be grateful to continue the subject with the Minister. Could I ask, through you, Mr Deputy Speaker, now that the consultation is complete, will the Minister outline the next steps and the timeframes, please?
So the consultation, as the member rightly points out, closed on the 30th of September, and the purpose of this public consultation was to gather views and comments as to whether lighting should be provided on the Colm Greenway, and if so, whether it should be installed in the entire route. We have received 1,700 responses to that consultation, and so officials are working through all of the feedback. And the outcome of this consultation will guide not only whether we light the Colm Greenway on a pilot basis, but the development of future policy on lighting active travel routes.
Supplementary for Ms Bunting.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I'm grateful to the Minister for that answer. I look forward to seeing what comes out of the consultation and how they're going to proceed. But with regard, just continuing on the subject of sustainable transport, the Minister will also be aware that pre-pandemic the park and ride at Dundonald was at capacity regularly. So post-pandemic, that's going to continue to be an issue. Could the Minister outline what plans she has to address this, please?
I thank the member for her question and the tenuous link that was creatively provided. The member will know that I've invested significantly in the provision of park and rides, and we're taking forward a number of schemes. Dundonald does present difficulties because of the challenges around land availability, but of course my officials continue to work to identify what options we can have to try to release the pressure on that site, because of course what we need to be doing is encouraging as many people as possible to make that switch out of their private car and across onto public transport.
Cara Ferguson for Newcastle. I call Cara Ferguson for a question.
Thank you. Can I ask the Minister for an update on the All-Ireland Strategic Rail Review?
I thank the member for her question, and I recently met with Minister Eamon Ryan and the consultants who are taking this piece of work forward. So the purpose of the All-Ireland Strategic Rail Review is to look at our existing rail network to see where it can be improved, and that's a particular issue in the North West, of course. It will also look to identify the potential for new rail links so that we're better connecting communities and businesses. It will also examine the possibility of rail in terms of connecting our international gateways, so our ports and airports, and we'll also examine the potential for freight as well. All of these, I think, are hugely important as we tackle the climate emergency. The consultants have been asked to report back within a 12-month period. So this will be an evidence-based approach, an evidence-led approach, but there will also be the opportunities for public engagement as well. So I would encourage members to input into that process when they can.
Cara Ferguson, supplementary question for Cara Ferguson.
It is vital that rail connectivity is improved in the North West to begin to end regional inequalities and unlock the potential of the area. Can the Minister also give an update on the ongoing studies considering a half-hourly service on the Derry line, as well as the additional halts at Ballykelly, Strathfoyle and the City of Derry Airport, and whether this report is still due in November?
I thank the member for her question, and when I took up the post I said that I was committed to tackling regional imbalance, better connecting communities, particularly in the North West. If anyone looks at the rail map, it speaks volumes in terms of the lack of investment and the lack of connectivity. So I'm pleased to say that my officials continue to work at pace on this. We're linking in with Into the West, who have been invaluable in terms of identifying the terms of reference, and I'm pleased to say that the feasibility study will be completed next month, and that will enable us then to move forward in terms of the next steps in terms of a business case.
Paula Bradley for a question.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Minister, the consultation on the second phase of the glider scheme that will connect north and south of the city is due to end today, if I'm correct. Could I just ask you, like my colleague Joanne Bunting, what are the next steps in the timeframe on that?
I thank the member for her question, and she is correct. The public consultation on phase 2 of the glider closes today, so there still is time and opportunity for members to feed into that consultation if they haven't already done so. Well, obviously, my officials will then work through the feedback and will be bringing a submission to me in terms of identifying the best routes. I want to reassure people, though, that this isn't a predetermined outcome. The consultation set parameters in terms of the work of the consultants, but I'm keen to listen to the feedback, and then that will determine next steps. Of course, a critical component of that is the Belfast City region deal, because this is a project within that, so it's very keen that that's prioritised and that we can get on to deliver the multiple benefits that we know that the glider phase 2 will deliver for the people of North Belfast and South.
Supplementary for Paula Bradley.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for her answers. Minister, you mentioned there the City Regional deal, and whenever the glider was first mooted for within North Belfast, it had talked about going up to as far as Global Point in South Antrim, or Mollusk, which is part of that City deal as well. So it's just to ask you, why was that not taken into consideration whenever you put out the consultation? Albeit I don't know how it managed to get through Glengormley at rush hour, but just to ask why it was stopping where it's stopping.
I thank the member for her question. And so the routes that have been identified as part of the consultation were determined by the consultants, factoring in a number of issues around the engineering of routes, accessibility, but also viability as well. So it was the parameters upon which we went out to consult. But of course, I've been very clear that I want this to be a genuine public consultation exercise. So I'm very keen to hear the views about extensions of the routes. I'm very keen that we give that careful consideration in terms of identifying the next steps.
Call William Humphrey for a question.
Thank the Minister for an answer so far. Minister, you'll be aware that my party secured money through confidence in supply for the York Street Interchange. Can you update this House how that is progressing? Obviously, it's vital for this city, but particularly Northern Ireland in terms of connectivity.
I agree with the member, Mr Deputy Speaker, that this is a very important and strategic project, and I can confirm that I have allocated £2.7 million in this financial year to continue the development of the project. This funding will deliver a placemaking analysis of the project and the wider area in light of new and emerging policies, an active travel review looking at walking, cycling, public transport connectivity through the scheme and in the wider area, the further development of the engineering design, including site investigation works to reduce cost and design risks. With regard to future funding, the Executive has committed to the delivery of essential infrastructure projects as part of the New Decade New Approach Agreement, which, as a member will know, includes York Street Interchange project. I therefore expect that this project will be funded by the Executive in line with other priorities such as the A5 and A6. Work on the placemaking and active travel review is progressing well, and I hope to be in a position to consider its outcome shortly before deciding on the next steps.
Supplementary for William Humphrey.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased, Minister, with the answer. I look forward to being updated as the House will too. Minister, I'm pleased that you've now visited Glenside and Harmony Lane in North Belfast. The Northern Ireland Housing Executive Belfast City Council and DAERA have stepped up to the plate and assisted those residents who are long suffering in terms of criminality, antisocial behaviour, dumping and so on. What is your department going to do?
I thank the member for his question, and another very creative and tenuous link to the original question. 10 out of 10 for creativity on the DUP benches today. Yes, I went out to visit Harmony and met with the residents, and I want to absolutely say that the commitment and the sense of community and pride that those residents have is truly remarkable. Of course, there are challenges because it is an unadopted laneway, and so that does present challenges, but I gave a commitment to residents that we would look to see what we can do creatively, and I've asked my officials to explore what legislative powers we may have so that we can come to the table and look to adopt it, because it is, as you say, a blight. It is subject of antisocial behaviour, and I think it's very important that we all do what we can to try to address this and, importantly, support those residents in their endeavours.
Question for Arlia Flynn.
Thank you. Can I ask the Minister if she could provide an update around some of the work the department's doing to implement protective infrastructure on our bridges in relation to suicide prevention, please?
I thank the member for her question, and as a Minister and also as an MLA for North Belfast, mental health and suicide prevention is a priority for me. When I came in to take up the post of Minister for Infrastructure, one of the first questions I asked myself was what could my department do better in terms of tackling this issue. So we've been engaging in a piece of work called Relink the West Link, and that's looking at feasibility of having measures, environmental measures, at our bridges around the West Link, so that we can create softer, greener areas where people feel safer, for example. And so I would hope to be in a position to be able to make an announcement on that shortly.
Supplementary question for Arlia Flynn.
And thanks very much to the Minister for a response. And you had mentioned there, Minister, that the work that you're doing within your own department around suicide prevention, and it's important just to state that it actually is a responsibility of all the executive parties and departments to try and tackle this issue that is still impacting on our society. But could I just ask the Minister then finally if the pilot that's being carried out, could the department look into expanding the scope of that pilot to maybe include any additional bridges? Thank you.
Thank the member, and she's absolutely right. Individually as ministers, but collectively as an executive in society, we need to take ownership of this issue. And I very much value my role on the executive subgroup on mental health and resilience and suicide prevention as well. I can confirm that in the feasibility where we're looking to identify which Bridge is best placed to initiate this, but I've also asked my officials to be looking to see in the interim, is there something that we can do along all of the bridges, because I'd be very keen that we tackle this issue. It is a location of great concern, Mr Deputy Speaker, and so I think it's very important that we all come together, make small changes financially, but they can actually have a huge impact on vulnerable people.
Call Harry Harvey.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Minister, can I first thank you for dealing with the recent problems occurring with the new online MOT booking system. Having sampled it myself and can say it's now working fine, dates available even at short notice. Minister, my question is this: when are you intending to make possible walk-in bookings again at all MOT centres for those who wish to book over the counter, as a lot still require this service, with some members of the public not having access to computer systems and are depending on relatives or friends? Banks are open, post offices are open, shops, so why not MOT centres? Thank you.
I thank the member for his question. I'm glad that he had his particular issue resolved. As he said, we did close over-the-counter services in line with public health advice. People can make applications online, or if they're having difficulties, accessing it digitally, there is a call centre as well. But what I'm very keen to look to do is to deliver services that are closer to communities. So my department is progressing work with Libraries NI to agree face-to-face booking inquiry service that they would deliver on behalf of DVA, because I think libraries across the north should be vital parts of our community network. We should be putting services into them. We shouldn't be placing them under threat. So this is a piece of work that we're working at pace, because I would like to see us be able to provide that face-to-face service at people's doors, at the heart of their community, in their local library.
That's it, members. Time's up. Just take your ease while we move to the next item of business, please.